Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giribadadari Gopi Jana Balaba Giribadadari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Jayam Vishnupad Paramamsa Padabraja Kacharya Rastatara Sadasri Sriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravisram Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we're on Canto 9, Chapter 1, King Sujumna becomes a woman. And I'm going to read through from 34, and then this is 42 on the board. All right. And that will be the last of the chapter. So let me see what we've got here. So text 34, I'll just read the English. Sujumna had been transformed into the best of beautiful women who excite sexual desire and was surrounded by other women. Upon seeing this beautiful woman loitering near his ashram, Buddha, the son of the moon, immediately desired to enjoy her. The beautiful woman also desired to accept Buddha, the son of the king of the moon, as her husband. Thus Buddha begot in her womb a son named Pururava. I heard from reliable sources that King Sujumna, the son of Manu, having thus achieved femininity, remembered his familial spiritual master, Vashishta. Upon seeing Sujumna's deplorable condition, Vashishta was very much aggrieved. Desiring for Sujumna to regain his maleness, Vashishta again began to worship Lord Shankara, Shiva. O King Pariksit, Lord Shiva was pleased with Vashishta. Therefore, to satisfy him and to keep his own word to Parvati, Lord Shiva said to that saintly person, "Your disciple Sujumna may remain a male for 1 month and a female for the next. In this way, he may rule the world as he likes." There's a short purport there. The word Gotraja is significant in this connection. Brahmanas generally act as the spiritual masters of 2 dynasties. One is their disciplic succession, and the other is the dynasty born from their semen. Both descendants belong to the same Gotra or dynasty. In the Vedic system, we sometimes find that both Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and even Vaishyas come in the disciplic succession of the same rishis. Because the Gotra and the dynasty are one, there is no difference between the disciples and the family born of the semen. The same system still prevails in Indian society, especially in regard to marriage, for which the Gotra is calculated. Here the word Gotraja refers to those born in the same dynasty, whether they be disciples or members of the same family. Text 40. Thus being favoured by the spiritual master, according to the words of Lord.Siva, Sujumna regained his desired maleness every alternative month, and in this way he ruled the kingdom, although the citizens were not satisfied with this. Short purport: the citizens could understand that the king was transformed into a female every alternative month, and therefore could not discharge his royal duty. Consequently, they were not very satisfied. 41. O king, Sujumna had 3 very pious sons named Utkal, Gaya and Vimal, who became the kings of the Dakshinapat. Okay, so now text 42, you can repeat. Tata Parinate Kale Pratishtana Pati Prabhu Pururavasa Utsrija Gam Putraya Gato Vanam Tata Parinate Kale Pratishtana Pati Prabhu Pururashva Utsrija Gam Putraya Gato Vanam. Ladies. Tata, thereafter. Parinate Kale, when the time was ripe. Pratishtana Pati, the master of the kingdom. Prabhu, very powerful. Pururavase, unto Pururava. Utsrija, delivering. Gam, the world. Putraya, unto his son. Gataha, departed. Vanam, to the forest. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, when the time was ripe, when Sujumna, the king of the world, was sufficiently old, he delivered the entire kingdom to his son Pururava and entered the forest. Purport: according to the Vedic system, one within the institution of Varna and Ashram must leave his family life after he reaches 50 years of age. Panchashad or Urdvam Vanam Vrajat. Thus Sujumna followed the prescribed regulations of Varnashram by leaving the kingdom and going into the forest to complete his spiritual life. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 1st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Sujumna Becomes a Woman. Thereafter, when the time was ripe, when Sujumna, the king of the world, was sufficiently old, he delivered the entire kingdom to his son Pururava and entered the forest. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I already said that. Sorry, I already said it. Okay, so this is rather an unusual story. We have a king that becomes a queen on alternative months. So naturally his sense of Varna and Ashram was a bit scrambled. Chatuvarnya maya shrishtam gunakama vibhagasa. According to the guna and the karma, then one is fitted somewhere within that Vedic system, Varnashram system. So it was a little odd for the people of the kingdom to have to relate to somebody that was of one kind of guna and karma one month and another kind of guna and karma the next month. And apparently nothing more could be done. It had already been transformed several times as it was, so it's understandable that he must have been a little confused about his own gender identity, as they call it nowadays. This has also become an issue in modern society. I did a bit of homework, and there's some really weird stuff going on outside nowadays because of the lack of a good Varnashram system. Because he was able to function somehow or another. They made adjustments because the Varnashram arrangement is very powerful and natural. So somehow or another they were able to tolerate Sujumna becoming one gender one month and another gender the next month, and they kind of survived it. Varnashram is very important. Prabhupada said that this is one of the functions he wanted to introduce in ISKCON, not necessarily because those who are advanced devotees don't require guna and karma considerations or Varnashram considerations, but the general population do. And if they don't know how to act within the system of Varnashram, everything becomes very confused, and the whole intent and purpose of it, which is Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Yeah, at the end of going through your life you should get this moksha of some kind or another. That becomes lost when people, lose their understanding of this Varnashram system. So Prabhupada advised us that we should try to introduce that, even if it's just to show an example to the people of the world, so that they can organize their lives and make steady progress, and in the end go back home, back to Godhead, as Sujumna did. But nowadays we find that those who are educators especially, because they're not actually educated in the proper science of the spirit soul and how he's situated in the modes of material nature and what their guna and karma is, then they concoct all kinds of foolish sentimental ideas which only disturb people more and more. So a few examples of that, just in the last couple of years, this is going on right now, in some of the schools, many of the schools in England and also in Australia, they've started to try to eliminate gender bias. Yeah, they don't want kids to be growing up thinking that they're a particular gender. So their gender identity, they're being told now, could be anything. Pick what you like. Yeah. And they've told them that they want non-gender specific playing. That means that the kids will go out and they encourage the small boys to dress up as girls so that they won't become confused about their gender, or rather their choice to have a certain kind of gender, and not have it forced upon them that you're a girl, you're a boy, you should behave like this or you should behave like that. So they're trying to create a gender-free society. It sounds ridiculous, it is ridiculous, but it's going on by law. This is being introduced now into the schooling system. Another example of well-meant sentiment but foolishly misunderstood. In some places they've been told now that they can't clap their hands, the children, if they appreciate something. They should do silent clapping. That silent clapping means that instead of clapping your hands together, somebody might become disturbed by the noise of hands clapping. So don't clap your hands, just wave your hands about, pull faces, jiggle, but don't make any noise. So that's another that's in the UK, in Cardiff. And in Cardiff University, they've eliminated 34 different words and phrases so that they can achieve this genderless society. So some of these phrases that they're not allowed to use anymore: forefather, mankind, manpower, sportsmanship. You get the idea. You're not allowed to use those words anymore, otherwise you'll get into trouble. So the pronouns, somebody suggested instead of he and she, everybody should be Z, right? Just Z, everybody's the same. So they're trying, I mean there's many examples, but the fact is that they've also just recently been doing some research work into genes. A group of scientists, they're inspecting the genes of different people. They've been tracking 20,000 different genes. That's genes in the spelling Genes. Yeah, not the jeans that you wear, but the genes that the body wears. So from their investigation, out of the 20,000 genes, and a gene is it's the basis on which the body transforms itself or grows in a particular way. So they found that there are 6,500 genes that are very specific to either a male or a female. You can't mix them. They're like that permanently. So although on the one hand you've got these so-called academics trying to tell everybody, no, you can be a girl or a boy, it doesn't matter which. On the other hand, you've got some scientists saying, no, there are 6,500 genes which will either produce male attributes or female attributes, and there's nothing that you can do about that. So you should accept it. So in this way, everything's becoming extremely confused. And that's because people don't have a proper understanding, not just of gender, but of the real self. Because after all, this body, whether it's a female or a male body, doesn't matter. The real personality is spiritual, not affected by the changes of the body. There's one disciple of Srila Prabhupada who was having problems with his gender assignment, let's say. Didn't know whether he was a man or a woman. So he'd taken initiation. And I guess he felt some relief that now I know I'm not this body. But after some time, his biological nature was exerting itself and he was becoming confused again, whether he was really a man or a woman. And he went to see Prabhupada, and this is what I was told, and asked whether he should have one of these operations to change his gender. So Prabhupada told him, he said, just choose one and stick with it. Man or woman, it doesn't make any difference. You're not this body. Choose one and stick with it. So that way, the real thing is to discover your spiritual identity. Yeah. Here we have a very powerful personality who, by the machinations of others, or you could say it's his karma maybe, but he got put in this situation. She's a she, then a he, and then a she again, and then alternative months going on, but still ruling the kingdom. Although the citizens were not very satisfied, Prabhupada says. But they didn't throw him out as long as he was competent enough to rule the kingdom. And he was able to do that because he was situated in Varnashram Dharma. When King Ram, when he left Sri Lanka and came back to Ayodhya, Bharat was waiting for him. Bharat had refused to sit on the throne for the whole time that Ram was away, because he felt, this is Ram's throne, it's not mine. I'm just a caretaker. So when Ram came back, he was invited to enter the city and to sit or occupy the throne again. But he initially refused, and he had some investigation done first to find out whether all the citizens were following the Varnashram system or not. His idea was that if they were not following the Varnashram system, there'll only be havoc in society and it will be unrulable. And therefore he didn't want to have anything to do with it. But if they were following the Varnashram system, everybody was doing their occupational duty in the proper way, then they could be governed in the proper way. And of course, Ayodhya, actually, when Ram went back to Godhead, the entire population of Ayodhya followed him. When he left the city, they all followed behind him. He didn't want them to come, but they said, no, we're not going anywhere without you. And so when Ram went back to Godhead, all the citizens of Ayodhya, they also went back to Godhead. So they're liberated souls. But still, the Varnashram system was important enough that Ram was not going to enter the city unless this system was in place. So here we see that Sujumna, after sufficient time had passed, when he was sufficiently old, or his age was sufficiently ripe, as Prabhupada says, then he delivered the kingdom to his competent son and set out into the forest, at least to follow this prescribed regulations of Varnashram, with the obvious intention that at the end of his life he would quit this body, whether it was male or female, it didn't matter at that point, and go back home, back to Godhead. So this is of course in Kali Yuga there's no Varnashram, but to make things very easy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has introduced the Sankirtan movement as being the prescribed method for getting free from this bodily concept of life and becoming fit to enter back home, back to Godhead. Makes it very easy. So Prabhupada was very liberal in one sense. He accepted anybody, male or female, it didn't matter, as a disciple, and initiated them and taught them the basics of spiritual dharma, so that as they grow older they get more realization. At a certain point we'll realize for sure that we're not this body, and then we'll become eligible for this moksha or liberation. Moksha yishami ma suchaha. Krishna says, when you Manmana bhavamad bhakto majaji mam namaskaru, when you achieve these four things, always thinking of Krishna, bowing down before Krishna, like that, four things, worshipping Krishna, then you can surrender. You can give up all other dharmas. Sabadharma prijagya means cast it aside. When your mind is fixed on Krishna, Sabaimana Krishna Padara Vindayo, then at that point you can give up all consideration of Varnashram and everything else, and you can prepare yourself for going back home, back to Godhead, and I will accept you. Krishna says, when I see that you've achieved this complete liberation from the bodily concepts of life, from the necessity of guna and karma, then you're eligible to come back home, back to Godhead, and live with me eternally. Masuchaha, don't have any doubts about that. So this is our special opportunity, benediction for the age of Kali. It's not possible actually to follow the Varnashram system, at least not as strictly as it was done or as it was described in the Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures. In Kali Yuga, guna and karma are completely mixed, scrambled up together, and people are very, very confused, as we've just seen, about what their identity is. So in the middle of that confusion, as things are becoming more and more dysfunctional in human society, there's an increasing requirement that this Sankirtan movement be spread as far and as wide as possible. And especially now, because people have become very puffed up, so-called scientists and educators, thinking that they've got, or they can get control of the material nature, and then they can do whatever they like. This is the mentality of the modern scientists. There's no God in control. There's no personalities. Everything is just matter. And that matter somehow or another mysteriously combines and recombines into various shapes and objects. And if we can figure out the system of how matter is combining together in various ways, we can actually conquer material nature, and then we can do whatever we like, because then we'll be God. So that's what's going on. The search how to become freed from the limitations that have been imposed upon us by material nature and become completely free to do anything and everything as you like. This is their teaching at schools. But the real problem is that they don't know the basis actually of life. They don't know what consciousness is. They don't know what a living being actually is. And therefore, everything that they do is just making things more and more, worse. As Prabhupada says in his early Krishna consciousness record album, that people are simply becoming entangled more and more in the complexity of material nature. So things are complex, but there is a way to actually bring them to order so that everybody can continue to make steady progress and get the benefit, the real benefit that the human form of life offers us. We're spirit souls, we're not this body, but there's billions of spirit souls all over, 8,400,000 species. So out of all those species and all the trillions and millions and billions of different kinds of living entities, we have this human form. And this human form is meant for one specific purpose, to give us the opportunity to transcend all this foolishness and ignorance and become fit for going back home, back to Godhead. This is our real business as human beings. So the Bhagavatam explains in so many different ways how we're not this body. That's the first thing. So the story of Sujumna is very interesting. Why? Because despite the change in the gender, he or she, whatever, was able to, renounce everything, renounce his identity with the body, enter into the forest, and then meditate on Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. So it may seem a little odd why this chapter's been put in there. What does it have to do, with the real progress in life? But this is the answer. It's to show us that we're not the body, that the same living entity can become a male or a female. The same living entity can occupy a human form or a demigod form, or a dog form, or an animal, or plants or whatever. But the same essential spiritual being remains as he is, no matter what the external manifestation is presented by that soul's entanglement in guna and karma, or in the three modes of material nature. This Srimad Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, is meant to lift us out of that foggy or shrouded understanding of what we really are and bring us to a point of clarity. And that clarity means I know I am not this body. I know that I'm an eternal spirit soul. I know that I am eternally the son of Krishna. This is the purpose. That's doing good for others. To give people that information, that is real education. And right now people are suffering because we have so many puffed up rascals, occupying the political posts, occupying the educational systems, any system that they can get a hold of where they can control other people. And that's what's going on in the schools now. You have a particular class of so-called teachers who have a particular idea about what they consider is what we call varnashram. They have their own particular idea about how people should live and what they should do and what they shouldn't do. It's manipulation through the through the English language or any other language. Language gets misused by unqualified people to achieve their own particular ends. It's got nothing to do with the welfare of the people that they're imposing their ideas upon. They're just like we'll say in communist countries, under the name of freeing everybody from the shackles of servitude to the upper classes, then the communist system was to convince people that actually we're all the same. Yeah, you don't have to be pushed around by the aristocracy and manipulated in this way and that. We're all the same, brother. Yeah, we're all the same. But what happens? As soon as you get rid of the one ruling class, the next one steps right into the gap. Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, all these, that's what they were doing. They were simply manipulating people because people are not properly educated about the real goal in life, so they're susceptible to being manipulated by self-aggrandizing so-called kings or prime ministers or presidents or whatever. They're simply manipulating people's minds and confusing everybody, and then putting people in that confused state under their own control. So this is what's going on. So you have the same system, it's going on. The communists did not lose. Everybody thinks that in 1989, when they brought down the Berlin Wall, then they got freedom. There's no such thing as freedom. There's no such thing. The communists had already won the battle by that time, because all of this kind of gender manipulation, this is all the same ideal. It's based on the same ideas that we're all equal, brother. Yeah, the communist idea to make everybody equal. But nobody's equal. Everybody's different. So they're lying. Why are they lying? Because they want to get control. They want to manipulate people in whatever way that they can. So that tendency to control things or to try to control things, that's always going to exert itself as long as there's no understanding that there is one supreme controller, and that's Krishna, and that all others are his eternal servants. Yeah. So we will be controlled, that's a fact. But we don't want to be controlled by ignorant rascals who manipulate us for their own sense gratification. If you become controlled by Krishna, you enter into a whole new field of happiness and enjoyment with the Supreme Being in so many different ways. Pastimes are going on, and nobody's hurt, nobody's confused, or rather if they get confused, it's for the pleasure of Krishna and therefore their own pleasure. But this is the situation. So we have to try to restore Krishna to the number one position. Yeah, remove the confusion from people's minds and educate them that there is a supreme living being and that we are parts and parcels of that Supreme Living Being. This is our real identity. And if we act according to reality, then we can become happy. If we act according to illusion, then you can only become more and more unhappy. So nowadays people are becoming more and more unhappy, despite the so-called advancements of technology and manufacturing and so many different things. But who is becoming happy? Everybody's becoming more and more fearful, because we've got a bunch of lunatics, crackpots, rascals, who are running the country. They're running the educational systems. This was how the British established themselves in India. This is how the Varnashram system, what was left of it in India, was finally destroyed by manipulation of language. About 150 or 200 years ago, the British realized that these people are so attached and so embedded in their own culture, we'll never be able to do anything with them unless we cut them off from the source of their culture. So they stopped the teaching of Sanskrit in all the schools in India. That language is the basis for everything else. So when the school system was changed from being Sanskrit based to English language based, then gradually it was possible to bring in the whole British sense of culture, whatever ideas or maxims that they had. They were able to bring those in by cutting people off from the natural source of information, which is the Vedas, which is written in Sanskrit. So by abolishing the study of Sanskrit, more or less, they were able then to manipulate the entire population, and within a generation or 2 generations, convince them that their own culture, the Vedic culture, was rotten, it was stupid, it was imagination, etc., etc. So even now, that hangover is still here in India. You meet so many people, so-called educated people, but they don't care a fig for the Puranas, the Vedas, etc., because it's now been drummed into their head that this is all backward, this is fairy tales, this is stories, fairy stories told by some ignorant or foolish sages that live in the forest somewhere, uneducated, uncivilized sages living in the forest. So Prabhupada was trying to reintroduce the authority of the Veda, to revive the sense of Varnashram at least, and then from that platform people can very easily come up to the spiritual platform. So this Krishna consciousness movement has just begun. It will go on, and who knows how quickly, but Krishna can do wonderful things. But it's absolutely necessary that people be put back in touch with their origins, because their origins are spiritual, and the systems that bring one to that spiritual origin are also spiritual. So that has to be there. Otherwise, there'll just be more and more confusion, and in the end, everybody will simply fight as they do. Last century, hundreds of millions of people were butchered in this fighting between one lunatic and another. Prabhupada told us a story that when he was at school, if there were 2 boys that were misbehaving, the teacher would bring them out before the class, and he would make them stand in front of each other, facing each other, arm's length. And then on the order of the teacher, they had to grab a hold of the ears of the other boy. So that I've got his ears, he's got my ears. And then when the teacher gave the order, they had to pull. So they're pulling each other's ears, because they're having his own ears are being pulled. It's hurting like anything. He gets more hurt, so he gets more angry, so he pulls the other guy's ears. He gets more hurt, more angry. In this way, they can't let go because the teacher won't let them let go. So they're crying and pulling their ears against each other. And only when the teacher says, all right, now you can stop. Go and sit down. then they stop. So in the same way, material nature is pulling everybody's ears. One Hitler, one Churchill, all right, now stand. Pull the ears. And Hitler and Churchill are pulling their ears, and only when material nature says, all right, now you can stop, then it's finished. Yeah. So this is the situation in the material world. Everybody's being manipulated, everybody's suffering in one way or another. We may think that we're very advanced in so many ways, but when Maya decides to make us pull each other's ears, nothing can be done. You can't stop until, your karma has burnt its way out. So the Krishna consciousness movement then anyway is to get us freed from the impulses born of contact with the modes of material nature, to understand that we are not the doers. Yeah, it's what Prabhupada called the mastership competition. Everybody's trying to become a master, and therefore they're suffering life after life. So by reading the Bhagavatam, reading these stories, we come to understand the real nature of the living being, what his guna and karma should actually be, take up spiritual practice, and at the end of this life, whenever it may come, we're ready. Chant Hare Krishna and leave very nicely and very peacefully, as we're seeing now. So many of our older God brothers and God sisters, practically every day or every week now, somebody else has gone. So where did they go? That person that we were talking to last week, now we're burning the body on the banks of the Ganges. Where's the person gone? Did he just evaporate into thin air and not exist at all? No. Exactly where they've gone, that we'll see, but they're in Krishna's hands. That's the point. If we can die in the right way and quit these bodies, temporary bodies, male or female, it doesn't make any difference. I remember one girl in Melbourne. So at the end of a class one time, she asked the devotee that was giving the class, can a woman go back to Godhead? So the reply was, not if you think you're a woman. Right? Can a woman go back to Godhead? Not if you think you're a woman. Not if you think you're a man. Yeah. When you think only, manmana bhavamad bhakto majjajimam namaskaru, that Krishna is everything. I'm his eternal part and parcel. Whatever Krishna wants, that's all I'm interested. I have no other interest. Then he can go back to Godhead. He can get out of this madhouse that we call the material world. So we'll finish at this point. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, Prabhu. I have a comment. Oh, one moment. In text 40, there was a small purport, and Srila Prabhupada said that when the king Sudumna was a female, then he could not discharge his royal duty. So it seems that people in female bodies should not be leaders. Is that what he's saying?
Well, generally speaking, just like I mentioned, the scientists have discovered so many what they call genes. A gene kind of transforms things in the body. So there's, in the male body and the female body, there are actual biological differences. And so that soul that's occupying that particular kind of body, at least for the duration of that life, will be more inclined to a particular service than somebody else. So the idea is that, well, one example they give is that the gene that makes your hair grow, it transforms the basic matter of the body, and different manifestations come from it. So there's a gene in the male form which makes your hair grow all over your body, a lot thicker than a woman's body. So, that's one example there of material form where you have no choice but to accept it. So in the same way, Varnashram system means or identifies that there are differences. We don't say everybody is equal on the material level. We say everybody is equal on the spiritual level. But there are very definite differences, biological, psychological. As a result of the biological difference, the psychological difference is there as well. Because they're interknit, they're kind of as one, if you like, at least for a short time. So you have to act according to your nature. So generally speaking, the male nature is, you know, not to be, well, let's say, not to be pedantic or anything, but the male form is more suitable to for certain functions. One of those is fighting. Male bodily strength is 70% more, upper bodily strength is 70% more than a female. That's why you'll see in sports, they don't get, you know, Roger Federer, he's the top tennis player. They don't have him playing tennis against Serena Williams or one of the top women players. The men's court, they do up to five, what do you call it, breaks? Huh? Sets. They do 5 sets, but the women only do 3 because they know there's some, you know, physical differences. It's a simple example, but it illustrates the point. So in the Varnashram system, the ladies had very set duties to perform, and the men had theirs. So you don't read very much about the women going out to fight the war. No women were fighting on the Battle of Kurukshetra, only the men. So that's the male dharma, if you like. Yeah.
So in the UK, where they're teaching this genderless new thing, are they acknowledging the differences between the psychophysical nature of ladies and men, or?
Sorry?
In the genderless teaching that they're doing in the UK,
right?
Are they teaching the difference between psychophysical nature and?
No, what they're doing now is that they're telling kids that if you think you're a boy, you've been brainwashed. You have a choice. You have a choice. Don't let them manipulate you. If you want to be a girl, be a girl. If you want to be a boy, be a boy. Nobody can stop you. You make your own choice. So they've got 9-year-old kids going up to the teachers or the parents and saying, actually, I think I might be, you know, a boy. Going up to the teachers or their elders and saying, I think I might be a girl. They're so confused, they don't know whether they're boys or girls. It's crackers. I read a story the other day. One, I think she was a woman, she wanted to be a man. Once she became a man, then she wanted to go back to being a woman again. She wasn't happy being a man. So they're all, I mean, you know, it's very crazy. But the Varnashram system says, no, you have a particular nature, and that can be observed, yeah, by astrological means, by social means, you know, by their own capability to learn things, understand things. And once they've been identified in a particular Varna and ashram, then they're trained up very nicely, you know, to work in that way, and they're happy and satisfied. And although there are differences in the different Varnas, at the same time they're all working for the same purpose. They're all working for the same goal. So the Shudras, although they do all the manual work, they're not any less off, if you like, than those who are Brahmins. Because everybody's trying to please Krishna. That's the ultimate goal of Varnashram, to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you may be a Shudra. It doesn't make any difference. If you can please Krishna, then you're as good as a Brahmin or more. Here in Mayapur, I remember in 1977, Prabhupada was stood out on the balcony of the Lotus building there, and I was next to him, and he was looking down. You know, there's this small park next to the Lotus building. And one of the Bengali ladies, she was picking flowers. Prabhupada was observing for a few minutes. And then he told me, he said, just just by picking those flowers, she's taking one more step back to Godhead. So she's not at a disadvantage because, she's not giving a class or she's not, doing managerial work or whatever. She's picking flowers and making garlands. But that's going to take her back to Godhead. From Krishna's point of view, we're all spirit souls. You have to engage yourself somehow or another in his service. We have these bodies to do that service with. But what kind of service and how it will be done, that requires good intelligence. So you have to understand a person's varna and ashram. When that's understood, then everything becomes very peaceful, people become generally very happy, and Krishna becomes satisfied. And when Krishna is satisfied, then you're home free, as they say. All right? Any other?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you mentioned that when Lord Ramachandra went back to Godhead, all the citizens were willing to go with him. So what happened to Ayodhya and Lava and Kushar, Lord Ramachandra's? Everyone left?
Ayodhya is the spiritual world. Prabhupada said when you become Krishna conscious, you realize that everything is spiritual. So the whole Vrindavan, although we think you're going, let's say I'm going from Mayapur to Vrindavan. I'll tell you, actually there was a story about Rasagya. Yeah, you know Rasagya, she was the dancer. So she got cancer. Previously she'd been married to Lohitaksa Prabhu. He fell in a bit of Maya. But at the end, he also contracted some cancer. And it looked like he was going to leave his body very quickly. So although they'd broken up at that time, Rasagya went to see him and she immediately made arrangements to bring him to Vrindavan. So she flew him over, looked after him, and after 7 days, I think, then he left. So everybody was very happy. He made it back to Vrindavan and he left, went back to Godhead. So later on, Rasagya, she also got cancer. And she was staying in, I think maybe Austin in Texas. And she had hardly any association. I don't think there was a temple there at that time. She couldn't go anyway. So there was just one lady that was looking after her, I think, one or two, that was at the most. And then this question came up, shall we take her back to Vrindavan? Shall we? The cancer was quite advanced at that point. So it was even doubtful whether she could get on a plane and fly that far. But they were, out of sentiment, they were thinking that, let's try and get her to Vrindavan so she can leave her body there. But then she had a dream. And either Krishna, I think it was Krishna. Krishna told her, Vrindavan is in your heart. So when he told her that, she became very peaceful. So Austin is not Austin. Yeah, what we see as Vrindavan, as a physical space, is not Vrindavan. But what we see as Mayapur, we may get glimpses of the real Mayapur. Right now we're kind of skimming on the surface. We know it's Vrindavan, but we haven't seen it as Vrindavan. We know it's Mayapur, but we haven't seen it as... If you go to Jagannath Puri, then it's mentioned there that the enlightened souls, they see that all the residents of Jagannath Puri have 4 arms. I don't see them as 4 arms. Yeah, but they have. So the idea of a space and time dissolves, yeah, when you come to the spiritual platform, and therefore Prabhupada said that actually ultimately everything is spiritual. So the idea of all the citizens of Ayodhya emptying the city to go with Lord Ramachandra, they're going from one Ayodhya to another, that's all. All right, we'll finish there. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.